I'm Dr. Morrow, Janice Morrow with American Mood Swings. We're producing the show. It's a docu-style show on mental health. You mentioned in your podcast, let's talk about like how it's broken now and how yours is different than the traditional model. Like I think there was an emphasis on how what's often done is they look at the bad behavior.
Yes, yeah.
Punish. Like there was a few episodes that mentioned like a kid putting his head on the desk. So let's talk about how your approach is different with the life coaching and the why behind the why and things like that.
Right.
I thought that was very interesting.
So the idea of the work that we do is to get people to stop looking at behavior and start looking at what's behind the behavior. What we have to understand, Janice, is that behavior is language. All behavior is language. It's constantly telling us something. And what we're finding is that those people that are hired in the schools aren't hired to decipher language. They're hired to teach, right? And so when an educator is in the building and a kiddo is cursing them out or throwing a desk or some kind of negative behavior of some kind, they're only addressing that behavior because we have to remember that behavior to the adult in the building is making them feel uncomfortable.
Sure.
Right? It's bringing up their anxieties and their worst fears and all these other things. And so what we try to do is slow the educator down, allow them to look at the behavior through a different lens. Yes, that child, mocking this other child is most definitely annoying. I think we can all agree on that. But the question might be, why is that child mocking that other child, right? That child who cursed you out in class is definitely and most definitely disrespectful. But the question is, why did that child curse you out in the middle of class, right? Because until you find out why they've done it and what's causing that specific behavior, then it will never stop, right? So one of the things in CBT work, cognitive behavioral therapy work that we do, and again, we're not therapists, but we use the techniques of CBT, which we are allowed to do, right? Anybody can use them. There's no rule that only therapists can use them. We understand that thoughts create emotions which impact or influence our behavior. So remember, I said that we see students because of behavior. So what we do is we work backwards from the behavior. So what that might look like is student threw a desk. The question is not why did you throw the desk? The question is, what were you feeling before throwing the desk? Because the desk throwing was the behavioral outcome to the emotion, right? So I was feeling this. Now, what was the original thought that you had that made you feel this? Well, I was thinking about this. So then if we can support them and work with them to identify a new train of thinking and a new way to perceive that original thought, then by changing the thought process, we can then invoke a new emotional state, thereby changing the overall behavioral outcome. And so that's the work that we do.
That's the work. All right. Oh, it's amazing. Now, I think I was a little confused, but before, like I was thinking you go in at junior high and high school level, but it sounds like you can go in as early, like elementary, and that's like the light bulb moment. I mean, how great is that? Because your behaviors and patterns and habits. So let's talk about like at what age, the earliest.
So we do K through 12. We don't work with many kindergartners. There are a few here and there that come through, but normally it starts about first grade. We start working with kiddos. And like I said, every once in a while we'll get a kindergartner, and that's more for just like standard support for the student as a whole. And we do teach them some skills and things like that. And excuse me, we've now taken out a new program called, Pathways to Empower, which is a neuroscience-based mental health educational platform, which because of the artistry within the program and the way that it's broken down, we're able to use it so that we can teach kids at a much younger age. So for instance, the amygdala is considered the glowworm part of the brain, right? The prefrontal cortex is considered the dragonfly part of the brain, right? So each part of the brain has a specific little insect that is attributed to it, which makes it relatable to kids, that we can then teach them how to, like, what's happening in the moment when they're feeling a certain way.